This is the Ready Set Podcast, and here's your host, me, Joe Persinger. Ready Set Podcast.
All right. Hey, how's it going, everyone? How was your week, you fucks? What a show do we have for you this week? Sports are back. The Democrats are in the midst of their yawn fest of a convention. Looting in Chicago. The Chicago Cubs are a top 5 team. I don't even know what week it is anymore. Well, thanks for joining us. We are live on all of our podcast platforms. Please check us out. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and wherever else you might find a podcast. That's not true because I don't have this thing posted everywhere. Anyway, let's get to it. This is your one-stop shop, current events and politics podcast. If society's a joke, then we're just here for the first set. Are you ready? Set podcast! All right, so we're going to talk some Cubs baseball here in a minute, but let's talk about the city that's, burning down around the 2 baseball teams. Well, 1.5 baseball teams. And actually, we got a live shot here of Lori Lightfoot taking some questions about all this violence, looting, and lack of prosecution. Can we get that link going here?
All right, move on. Nothing to see here. Please disperse. Nothing to see here, please.
And quit baiting her, by the way. All right, so for those that don't remember, I grew up in Chicago in the early 90s. Oh, sorry, in the 80s. I'm 38, as I've stated before. Oh, what it would be like to be 20 again. No, that wouldn't be good. Then I'd be soft and easily trolled. Anyway, so I remember early 90s, about 10 years old. I used to spend a lot of time in my grandparents' house, so I'd be forced to watch the news, specifically CBS. So I know who Lester Holt was before any of you fucks did. And I remember one story. Back then, there was a lot of low-income, high-rise housing in the city, most notably Cabrini Green, Robert Taylor homes. I'm sure there's a few others. There was an issue around all of them, but specifically for this one, I think a gang member was attempting to snipe another gang member from one of these buildings, and he ended up shooting a kid that was walking to school. So the city finally having enough of this, because if you think about it, this is the early 90s, 91, right in there, in those first 3 years of the 90s. So the city had been roiling from the crack epidemic for the last however many years, and this was, I guess, the straw that broke the camel's back. Now you can go into this further and say, well, why did it take them so long to get into that? I don't know. They're Democrats. You tell me. So what the response from the city is where this happened, they lined the street with not every cop, I should say, but enough cops where if someone tried something, it wouldn't end well for anyone. And, this is how the leadership of Chicago responded to a very, very bad crisis that was plaguing the city and a lot of other cities as well. Actually, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to find that article. There's got to be an article on the internet that talks about this, and I'll put that in the description if you would like to read it. So, going back, a crooked early Chicago machine legacy Democrat, Chicago Mayor Daley, wouldn't put up with this contemporary madness we see today that Chicago is currently contending with. Yet, here we are. And as a former Chicagoan, it disgustes me. Okay, I lived there for a few years. I was in the suburbs, but I had a train that took me right into the city. You don't have to parse what I'm saying here. You know what I'm fucking saying. Because this is how Illinois works. If you're not from rural Illinois, you're from Chicago. If you're from rural Illinois, you're not from Chicago. You're from Illinois. Get it straight, you fucks. So as a former Chicagoan, it really just disgusts me to see how this current leadership team isn't dealing with the problem. And let's start with the district attorney. Kim, I refuse to prosecute and do my job, Fox. We saw her in action on a national stage even with Jussie Smollett and his faux hate crime. But this district attorney that oversees the area, I'm guessing Cook County, refuses to prosecute felonies. And thank God Cook County hasn't done away with the cash bail system. If you don't know what I'm kind of referring to, look at what's going on in New York. It's chaos. You have people committing violent crimes against other people and being released back out into the streets. And there are white liberals out there who think this is progress. I mean, I'm sure in small sample sizes of examples they would give you, sure, that cash bail system being destroyed or taken out probably has its benefits, but the costs outweigh the benefits. This is why you don't want to give these people your money to invest in. Again, not a business podcast. But looters loot and protesters protest and rioters riot and destroy statues and private and public property, and no one is charged. No one's charged. And then we have this recent situation, about a week ago, and now people are being charged, but that's only because political pressure was being exerted from the mayor. And that's kind of what our little opening was referring to. And what's even sadder is the mayor's still kind of protecting Kim Foxx because she even called her out by name. This is kind of like when, this reminds me of my server days working in restaurants. When you work at a restaurant, there's that one asshole or a group of assholes that are always doing some shit that creates regulations upon you. So, for instance, if I'm just pulling something out of my ass here, I worked at one restaurant where if you wanted to split your checks or move drinks over onto another check, you'd have to flag down a manager, explain to them what you're doing, and then they would swipe your card. Because some asshole along the way, who, whenever they would get a cash check, they would just the person would pay with cash. So before they close that check out, they'd move that drink over onto a new check, pocketing that $2.89 or whatever the drink would cost. I mean, you can only do that with non-alcoholic beverages. And I mean, if you think about that, you take 10 tables a day, you move that, you get 5 cash tables, you move that over 5 times, that's a little over $11. You do that 5 days a week, we're talking 50. I mean, you can see how this adds up quickly and how the business starts losing money. So now you have to go take an extra step to do something else. You have to take an extra step after taking an extra step because some jerk was trying to rip off the restaurant for $10 at a pop. So what ends up happening? A meeting's called. Instead of the manager or the mayor calling out this group of people, this person, Kim Foxx in the state's attorney's office, for stealing money, and now you have to take 5 extra steps to do something that you probably don't even want to do in the first place. Well, there you go. So, I mean, it's kind of just like one of those things. Just call them out by name. You're not doing anyone any fucking favors. But these are Democrats. This is how Democrats work. And just to clarify, the Republicans are no better. Don't get that confused in all of this. All right, so Lori Lightfoot, speaking of the devil, does not by any means get credit for this. I mean, she didn't call her out by name. I mean, she called her out, but not by name, And maybe local media has. I don't know. I don't read the Sun-Times. I don't read the Tribune. I have toilet paper that has more value than those liberal rags ever will. Oh, sometimes sports is okay, but I don't live there, so fuck you. So maybe they've called her out. I have no idea. But instead of calling out Kim Foxx for not doing her basic job, instead of acknowledging there are certain challenges in her administration, she accuses a politically friendly media, most likely a politically friendly media. We'll say more. I know John Cass of the Sun-Times is pretty fair with his coverage over there, but for the most part, I assume it's a pretty fair left-leaning media that's going to cover for the mayor. And what she does is when they ask her, simple question, she kind of yells at the media for attempting to bait her. And then there is a clip. Maybe I'll add to put the clip of that in the description here. And, so after you have Lori Lightfoot, so you have the state's attorney that doesn't want to do dick. You have a mayor who is just clearly in over her head and won't even call out her state's attorney. So that really tells you something there. And then there's Overlord Pritzker. How in the hell does this fat fuck feel about his governor's seat? I mean, really, should I say, how does he feel about buying his governor's seat? I mean, talk about coming to power at the right time. All of the citizens of Illinois face a closed-down economy, or at least it's a partially closed-down economy, while other states are basically opening up their economies, and they're basically doing this in hopes of using this force-staggering economy to elect Sleepy Joe, as a reason to elect Sleepy Joe. What's hilarious is he doesn't even have to do this. The state's going to vote blue no matter what. I mean, even if Chicago runs that entire state. Anyway, all hail Overlord Pritzker and his puppet master, Mike Madigan. So these neo-Marxist Democrats are running these urban centers. Who thought these urban wastelands could sink any further? Well, they didn't anticipate the genius of these leftist city politicians and their policies. I mean, no cash bail. Let's release prisoners because we're afraid of coronavirus sweeping through the prisons. Let's keep the economy closed. Mask mandates. Let's demand national mask mandates. I mean, it's insanity. Insanity. So good luck, you fucks. I mean, especially if Sleepy Joe gets elected. And speaking of Sleepy Joe, so like I said earlier, we're in the midst of the Democrat National Convention right now. Talk about a snooze fest. It's almost like it's I don't know. It's weird. It's just weird. I can't even watch it. But let's start last week where Sleepy Joe picks Kamala Harris to be his running mate. And what I find very interesting is the immediate pivot by the media is, oh, what a pick. She's a moderate. She's not a moderate. I mean, maybe she might have a few right-wing policies, I mean, which is really odd. I mean, that's really just coming from the left. I mean, I really would just say she's a Democrat with perplexing, at best, policy ideals. And this is honestly a very confusing pick. I mean, it looked like it was going to be Amy Klobuchar, and then George Floyd happened. That would have made sense. Would have pissed off the progressive wing of the party because, you know, they want diversity. There was the Atlanta mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, but a Biden Bottoms ticket, I don't know if that's going to play well bumper sticker-wise. Who else was there? Tammy Duckworth. She never had a chance. That just was the campaign in China. Looked like they, you know, were diversified within their diversity picks. There was Val Demings. She's a representative, actually in the county line, just by the house here. She's not in my district, but she was in the running. But she's a neophyte, and I don't think anyone even knows who she is. And plus, she's a cop. And then there's Kamala Harris. Again, she's the one that, you know, threw some pretty big punches at Joe Biden. I think she called him a quasi-racist and at one point suggested, or not suggested, but insinuated that maybe it's up to him to leave the race over those sexual allegations that were being alleged against him and that have magically also swept themselves under the rug. And now she's his vice president? What? I mean, talk about, you know, flip-flopping. Again, that's being nice. So how do you go from calling someone a quasi-racist, segregationist, to almost accusing them of being a sexual deviant, which he is, if, you know, depending on your definition there, to now being like, nah, this guy's good. I'm with him. We're good. It makes no sense. I mean, it just shows you how fucking ridiculous. Like, if she's flip-flopping on that, what's going to happen in crunch time when they need to make really big decisions in the White House? And she's a part of that discussion. Have you ever done a group project and have to work with someone like this? I mean, look at her record as an AG in California. She had a truancy law. So if your kid wasn't showing up to school, you're a single mom, working your ass off, you can't be around your kid at all times. and then you get arrested because the kid doesn't go to school? I mean, I kind of, this is kind of the right-wing thing I was talking about, because that sounds like something a right-wing, like a really right-wing AG would do. But like I always say, the further left or right you go, you're going to meet right there, and that's where the establishment exists. And that's kind of a perfect example of that. She used to also use inmates, California inmates, as slave labor for the state, which was provided by Joe Biden and his 94 crime bill signed in by Bill Clinton. Here you go. Is she a moderate? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound like she's a moderate. I mean, she was for Medicare for all. I think she wanted to give illegal immigrants free health care as well. The list goes on. And then you have something interesting here that does not get... I got to give credit to Jimmy Dore, which is a great podcast, by the way. I'm really getting into that one. Jimmy Dore, the Jimmy Dore Show on YouTube. So when Kamala Harris was the AG of California, she investigated a bank in her state, which I believe was said to have found thousands of probable illegal misdoings. Excuse my wordings on that. It was something to that effect. It was almost kind of like them saying, yeah, they did something illegal, but they didn't, but they did, but they didn't. Something like that. And they never charged or accused the bank of any wrongdoing. I mean, they think they publicly came out and said, look, whatever these guys are doing, it ain't kosher, but we're not going to charge them. Which is kind of weird. Want to know something that's even weirder? Who was the CEO of this bank? I think it was called One Bank, so you can look this up too. So who was the CEO of One Bank? Oh, what do you know? It's the Treasury Secretary right now, Steve Mnuchin. That's weird. So she refused to prosecute Steve Mnuchin, but she calls Brett Kavanaugh a rapist. Are you seeing kind of the consistency of inconsistencies that I'm attempting to point out here? I mean, on top of not going after Steve Mnuchin, he also had donated to her campaigns. I'm not sure if it's her Senate, her AG campaign. I'm sure somewhere along the lines he donated to one of those campaigns, most likely her Senate campaigns. And that basically needs to tell you all you need to know about how Washington swamp and state Washington swamp politics work. But anyway, here we are. We have the media covering for this next vice president. And don't even get me started about how she got into politics. Actually, you know what? Let's do that. Why not? I mean, it's, the classic way of banging your way up the ladder. You ever heard of Willie Brown, San Francisco mayor? Well, they were both in a relationship. She was in her, early 30s. He was in his early 60s. And, after being in a relationship with old man Willie Brown, she ended up being appointed to a few posh government spots. I believe one of them was a seat on a medical board, which was paying her like $90,000 a month or a year. It was something ridiculous. And I think she barely got to half of those meetings. I think another one she had was something in the unemployment office. She got appointed to some position. I want to say it's got to oversee the unemployment office in some capacity. And I mean, she was just, it's swamp behavior. You're just appointing people just because, not because they earn it, just because they know you and they get to sit back and collect a paycheck. Well, other people have to go to work every day and be treated like crap by people like that. So what's funny is she ends up running for attorney general after Big Willie basically gets her career started in politics. When her attorney general campaign started, the person she was running against pointed this out to everyone. Hey, this lady who's running against me was banging the mayor, and that's how she got to where she was. And she promptly distanced herself from that, and I guess when she got elected, told good old Willie that she'd put him in jail if he even jaywalked. Again, so you see the consistency of inconsistencies here? So anyway, going back to this vice president pick, they had a press conference last week They announced it. There was like 5 people there, obviously because of social distancing rules. They said it was a press conference. They did their little shticky shtick, introduced her, and took no questions. So was it a press conference? So, a few days later after that, they both saunter out to another press conference. And those are air quotes. And suggest a federal mask mandate. But that's just crazy Sleepy Joe. Always sleeping on the job. I think we should. I mean, a federal mask mandate? How would that work? Who would enforce a federal mask mandate? The FBI? DHS? I mean, they put DHS in Portland to try and stop a bunch of 20-something soy boys and white liberal women from burning down a court, and all hell broke loose even further. Maybe the CIA? I don't know.
All right, guys, we got the order from the White House. The new administration wants us to lock up anyone without any mask. Actually, scratch that. They're telling us no mask. We're allowed to shoot on sight. But unfortunately, for you Democrats and your wet dream there, such a thing doesn't exist. I mean, like I said, do you really want to implore that kind of power into the federal government? I don't think you do. I mean, trust me, that's the last thing anyone would ever want, is to implore that much power into the federal government. I mean, just think about that. I mean, you would have to have the FBI or DHS or somebody enforcing that kind of law, but you can't. And again, this kind of goes back to what I and actually I'm probably going to get into this a little bit later, but there's this like obsession with people that want the federal government to do everything. But there's literally a local government in your town. Think locally, not federally, you fuck. And of course, after this press conference, after Joe sits there and says, well, we need to have a national mask mandate. And really what he turns around and says is, we need a national mask mandate. So I implore all you governors to, have one. So really he's already even saying it in the words. I want a national mask mandate, but I can't really do that. So I'm imploring governors to put out a state mandate. Because that's what the federal government does. They just make recommendations because the states are responsible for the states, i.e. the governors are responsible for their states. But does Sleepy Joe or Kamala Harris take any questions after said press conference? No, they do not. Therefore, this wasn't a press conference. This was a political stunt. Take some fucking questions, Sleepy Joe. And, this hide in the basement weekend at Bernie strategies, I mean, it's been working so far, but it's not going to work in the last quarter of the election. I mean, I cannot see this working going into the fall. You have to take questions. You have to answer questions on top of that. All right, let's talk some Chicago Cubs really quick. So the Cubs have started this season at a pretty good pace. What's the record here? I'll look that up really quick. 15-7 after last night's win against the St. Louis Cardinals. They have a doubleheader today against them. And I got to say, this team, they're looking pretty good. I mean, minus the bullpen. You got clutch hitting, starting pitching. They're hitting in the right spots. They're challenging pitchers. They're, going, they're upping their making pitchers pitch against them, so they're jacking up high pitch counts against these teams, forcing them to go to their bullpens quicker than usual. And that's something you haven't really seen the Cubs do under Joe Maddon, hitting-wise. And starting pitching's been looking really good. It's just this bullpen, it just seems to be the Achilles heel of this team. And bullpen arms are just really hard to find these days. Starting pitching-wise, you have the Cubs are, 7th in... Is that in Major League Baseball? Yes, it is. They're 7th in Major League Baseball with an ERA of 4.02. As far as wins go, they place 5th in the league with 15. They are even on this list here. Whoa, geez.
23rd in the league with 183 strikeouts. I believe, what's the whip situation here? They're number 5 in the league with whip. What was the whip? Team whip 1.13, and I think the next one here, batting average against, they're the 6th in the league with .217. So it's not bad. Those aren't bad stats team-wise for this pitching staff. Pitching can get you really far, but it'll also get you out of the playoffs really fast if you don't have guys on the back end of your rotation. And I mean that bullpen-wise. Their 4 and 5 starters aren't horrible. I mean, that Alex, I think his name's Alex, but Mills, he's come out of nowhere. He's thrown a few good games. I think he gave one up his last start. But Yu Darvish has been looking pretty good. He had a great game last night against the St. Louis Cardinals. Looked pretty good. I think it was against the Brewers, his last start prior. And I will say the balls he's throwing look a lot better. I like the spin on the ball. He's placing them in the right spots. He's not hanging a lot of curveball and breaking balls like he was in the past. So that's kind of nice to see. But, kind of going out away from the Cubs, I mean, because it's really all we can say about them at this point, just go Cubs, right? But what about the product that Major League Baseball's put on the field that we're watching here? I mean, it's definitely something else. 7-inning games for doubleheaders. The Cubs had a doubleheader on Monday. I think it started at 5 and it was over by like 7:30. It was really weird, especially as the 7th inning was coming up. And I just remember thinking, actually, you're at the bottom of the 7th. I'm just like, what's the big deal about playing another 6 outs? But yeah, I guess, those latter parts of the game, those outs can really extend. That's probably another hour or so. Yeah, that's about right. Those last 2 innings can kind of get up there to an hour, making the games roughly 3.5, 4 hours at a time. So I'm not opposed to the whole 7-inning game for doubleheaders. The 3-batter rule, when they announced this, I was not really a big fan of this, but watching it, I kind of like it. The pace of the game is sped up, and then what's really cool is you get to see matchups now that you normally wouldn't. So the Cubs a few days ago were playing Milwaukee. I wish I could remember this reliever's names, but he was a submarine. I think he was a right-handed submarine pitcher facing off against a left-handed batter, or something to that effect. And it was just really interesting to see because you don't ever see those matchups. In the past, after that pitcher got his out against, let's say if that was a righty submarine pitcher, he was taking on a right-handed batter. The second he gets that out, he pulls him from the game. They put in a lefty pitcher. They're not doing that. That guy has to face 3 batters now. And again, it really makes up for some interesting matchups that you wouldn't normally see. But this situation definitely favors the offense. Again, pandering to the 20-year-olds, which I guess you got to do because, the baby boomers are going to be dead in 20 years, and the only people you'll be left with is the ones that you turned your back on. So you can't really blame Major League Baseball for doing what they're doing. The no crowds, this is another thing I thought was going to kind of mess with me watching the game, but it really hasn't. In fact, I've gotten quite used to it. It's kind of like when I go to the grocery store now and I, space myself out and then some fuck behind me wants to stand over my shoulder and breathe on my neck. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've kind of gotten used to this, stay out of my bubble situation. And I hope we kind of can keep going forward with that. But I don't really feel that way about crowds. I wouldn't mind seeing the crowds coming back. But they pump in the crowd noise. Weird at first, but I've kind of grown used to it. But what I will say is going to be weird is when they have crowds back in stadiums. I mean, I don't know why. It's just you just get used to one thing, and then the other thing is going to become weird. But it is what it is. I like it. And this postseason, we're doing 16 teams for the postseason. Just, what? I'm not even. I believe I talked about this in a prior podcast. It has come to fruition. Let's just not get me started on the podcast or on the postseason. But let's get back to the Cubs. So they split that Monday doubleheader with the Cards, losing Game 1 because of the bullpen. The 60-game regular season will play to this Cubs team strength. Think about it. If they're pitching 162 games, John Lester's not, he obviously pitches like a fifth of those. But, that second half of those starts, he would have a massive downslide. He's not going to have that problem this year because he's only going to be pitching basically that, that first, only half of a season roughly. But again, the starting pitching and the bullpen, the pitching overall it'll have its success and its downfall from both. It's a double-edged sword, we'll say. And without a robust trade market this year, because, the whole league is going into the postseason especially, there aren't going to be that many sellers. Everyone's buying. It's a buyer's market, baby. And, in a buyer's market, sellers... Wait, am I saying that right? I think I said that wrong. I guess it would be a seller's market technically, because if you were to, put one of your pitchers up, or is that a buyer's market? Again, this isn't a business podcast. I don't know what we're doing here. Anyway, there's not going to be a lot of arms available because everyone's going to be vying for the postseason. And again, don't get me fucking started on the postseason. All right, so I've actually started, I've shifted my, we'll say, economic situation into the gig economy, and it's not horrible. Live next to Disney. It's a pretty easy gig. Get to make my own schedule. And 9.99 out of 10 rides are awesome interactions. Through the many conversations I've had, this is kind of what I've gathered from the Uber ride-sharing public. So we're going to call this the Uber Index. This is not a business podcast. A lot of people over the last few months I've noticed, I've been doing this for about a month. So over the last month or so, I've talked to people, and what I've been hearing is, oh, yeah, just moved here, New York, just moved here a few months ago. So I would hear this over and over and over, kind of putting together, like, wait a minute. A few months ago, from New York, these are the constant things I'm hearing from people. Started making me think, is there an abundance of people from New York moving to Florida? And that's basically what it is. And it makes sense because, everyone said they had moved here a few months ago, and this is so that would have been mid-June, end of May, and I believe that's when New York was talking about reopening their economy. They never did. New York City has fallen in general. So where do people go from New York when they want to get out? Florida. Yeah, I don't get it either. People from Chicago go to Phoenix, so don't talk shit up there either. And yeah, that seems to be what the demographic shift is over here. But I see a lot of people like, oh well, that's bad for Florida politics, because it makes the state more purple than it does red. Yeah, that's true. Local politics can definitely be affected, but as far as the general election goes, if they're all moving here to Osceola and Orange County, those are next to Miami-Dade. Those are some of the bluest counties here in Florida. So as far as that goes, that's not really going to affect much because those are already blue counties. What I've noticed, the Florida Disney starting to pick up. When they opened up the park about a month ago, it was pretty slow around here. I have something I call the Walmart index, which is I just look at how busy the Walmart is around 6, 7, and that's how busy, or really around noon, through the day, and that's how busy you could tell Disney is because that's where a lot of those people are coming from. And the other side of it too is a lot of those people regionally travel to Central Florida from other parts of the state and the region. Driving down here and loading up on groceries, and then they go sit in their hotels and eat like fat fucks for whatever reason. And then, kind of going back to the Uber driving side of things, John Q. Public is gross, sloppy, inconsiderate, and disheveled. I had a request about a week ago to drive someone up to Sanford from here in Orlando. Well, I'm in Kissimmee, but regardless, it's about an hour north of here, and it was kind of a shit show to say the least. First of all, I tried to pick them up, and they were on the other side of a gate that wasn't working. So I call the lady, and she basically she's like, well, just come in. I explained to her, I can't, the gate's locked. So she's like, oh, okay, I'll just come to you. So she walks out and she's got like all this shit. She just starts loading into my car. I'm a nice guy. I don't really want to be a jerk. So I didn't say much. And she's like, all right, baby, I'm just going to go get everyone else and we'll be right back. And she comes back with her, two more adults. Well, I think one was like a teenager, but she was an oversized teenager. Maybe, I don't know. And 3 kids. So 6 people total. Now, Uber only wants 3 people in your car max, and no one's sitting in the front. So you can't even put 4 in there because I doubt I'm allowed to stuff anyone in my trunk. Although these people, I would have been more than welcome. They're happy to. And again, me being a nice guy, I didn't say anything. And plus, I had the right to kick them out. I could have been like, get the fuck out. But it was raining, and all the shit was in my trunk. What was I going to do? Just put it on the ground? I mean, someone would have smashed one of my windows, most likely. This was probably like a neo-Marxist, Maoist kind of group of people. I don't know. I shouldn't really say that, but probably what would ended up happening. So anyway, I eat the shit sandwich, and I drive them all the way up there to Sanford, looking down at my phone, thinking 10 minutes. Well, I counted down from about 55 minutes to 1 minute, and then they left. So something told me, make sure, I can't believe I almost forgot this. So we're driving up there, and I hear from the back seat, I'm going to do it, multiple times. And I'm thinking to myself, hey, that's not a muffled cough. That's concerning. So I peek back. Actually, I did a lane change. I was pretty slick about it because, I don't want to be too much of an evil jerk as much as I want to be. So I lane changed, look at the person, and she's not wearing a mask. And she's just hacking up along. Her little daughter or whatever is just hitting the side of the door. It was a disaster. So I finally drop them off, and I decide, okay, I better check the car. And the back seat was fine, nothing really wrong there. When I looked in the trunk, I have a Chevy Trax, so it's not a hatchback, but it opens up like one. It's a subcompact SUV. So I opened up the trunk, and there was like this stain on the carpet, which I basically discovered to be chicken gravy. I'm a kind of a gravy connoisseur. I know the difference. I can smell it too. And I was blown away by this. I was annoyed, mad, and I promptly gave that bitch 1 star and told Uber that the other lady wasn't wearing a mask. So I had a few surgical masks in my car, and I basically just, sorry, I'm messing with the audio here. And I just used those masks to clean up the gravy. So I kind of got some of the gravy out of the carpet, and then a bunch of it fell into the little space where the trunk latches itself into. So I was able to clean it out. And then the next day, every Monday, I clean my car. When I was, I have that like Armor All like cleaning shit where you just like clean all the vinyl and the plastic shit in the car. I was cleaning the back of the trunk and noticed there's a huge amount of gravy splatter on the back side of the door. So how these fucks managed to spill all that gravy is beyond me. Now I know what you're saying. Well, Joe, why didn't you tell Uber and take in a cleaning fee? I actually have a story about that, but I have to save that one for another time. Because I was just so fucking annoyed with these people, and I could sit here and tell you that I don't want to be petty like them, and that's why I didn't do it. But really, I was just moving so fast that when I wiped it up, I was like, shit, should have taken a fucking picture of that. Well, that's really what the truth is. Let's see. So yeah, and then I just moved on with my life. That's probably really what's going on. I just wanted to move on with my life. The other one was, this one I kind of felt bad about. This is like when I first started. It's about a month ago. Pick up this old lady. She's got to be at least 90, at least. Maybe she's in her late 80s. If she is, she's definitely, she doesn't have much time left. And someone decided to stick this lady into an Uber and send her to the hospital. At least that's where it told me to take her. So I brought her over there, and we get there, and she's like, "Oh, this isn't where I'm supposed to go." And I was like, "Well, that's the deal. I paid to take you from point A to point B." And what did she say? She's like, "Well, I'm supposed to be somewhere off John Young Parkway. For those of you that aren't local to Florida, it's just one of these major arteries that you could take from here to Kissimmee, fucking all the way up to Orlando, basically. And the hospital is kind of right off this major artery of this north and south roadway. And I told him, we're right off John Young, Yeah, we were. We were just right off of it. So I knew we were kind of in the area. And then she still kind of fought me. And I even said, I was like, hey, if you know where you're going, I'll be more than happy to take you there. The caveat was if it's not the hospital, she's got to add the stop. But I didn't have to go that far because she had no fucking clue where she was going. Then she proceeds to tell me, oh, well, my friend put in this stop. And this isn't where I'm supposed to be. I'm like, well, then I told her, well, your beef is with your friend, not me. There also happens to be this kind of, I don't know, the people that do, as an Uber rider myself, I never did this, but I guess there's certain sects of the population that use it that tend to believe that because, that I am your driver, that I'm also like your / concierge / personal assistant. Like, no, that's not how this works. The agreement is you get in the car, I drive you to where you want to be driven to, and then the deal is over. So I had another request come in, I think right before I dropped this lady off. So now we're going back and forth about this, and I have this other lady waiting for me. And as anyone knows, as a rider, I think after a certain amount of time, it costs you money to cancel, but that's still a loss as far as I see it, because what if they were going far? Anyway, going back and forth with this lady, and now I'm starting to get frustrated with her because I'm offering her options to get her to where she needs to go, but she doesn't want to take them and seems to be treating me as if I'm, what is it, that movie with Morgan Freeman, the driver dude, Driving Miss Daisy. I'm not Morgan Freeman, bitch. So anyway, finally I was like, all right, that's it. The hammer's coming out, not literally. And I basically told her that, she needs to get out of the car. We're done here. And, if she refuses, that's fine. We can call the police and we can pull an officer off the road and have him basically arbitrate this little conflict that we were having. And I also kind of threw in there that this being my property, I don't think they're going to side with you. So she got out. Long story short there. But she gave me 1 star, which, whatever. It is what it is. The secret there with Uber is, drivers can take almost 20, 30 trips a day depending on the volume they're taking. So your 1 fucking star rating isn't going to really do much in the long run, other than make that person mad. Do I have another one? I think the only other one I have, I do have 2 more. Well, there's one I have. This one's really quick. I picked up this guy not too far from where I live, actually, and he made me wait. So this is another thing I can't understand, is people, that the app is really good about telling you, hey, this fuck's on his way. He's right outside. He's going to be here any minute. And people still take forever for some reason to come downstairs or get out to the car. So this guy finally shows up, and he literally knocks on my window, not like it was, the way with a knock, it really reverberated through the car. He's like, hey, you my Uber? You Uber? I was like, it tells you where I am, you fuck. I didn't say that, but I was like, yeah, it's me. And I was like, hey man, do you mind not knocking on my window like that? This is my stuff. And he's like, you have problem? You problem? I said, yeah, I don't want you being so aggressive with my crap, bro. And he's like, I'm canceling the ride. I was like, sure. And let's keep in mind, this fuck wasn't wearing a face mask. And so how he had such an attitude out of the gate without wearing a face mask is beyond me. So I just reported his ass. I just drove off and wrote no face mask. So Uber wasn't going to side with that guy by any means. So this is kind of the crap that I've been dealing with. But again, those are 3 instances out of almost 300 rides I've had. So it's really not as bad as some people make it out to see. Or make it out to be, which is interesting because, and I only say that because a lot of people I've talked to, the first thing is like, well, have you had any problems? Almost like this is some prevalent thing that happens. And no, that's just the media doing what the media does. So here's another thing I've noticed, when I talk to people, when I'm driving them around, is that most people are politically moderate. Even some people that you see that, you're like, oh, this guy's a fucking lefty. This guy's, getting jerked off by Kamala Harris on some level. It's not the case. Everyone's, politically moderate. And I've yet to have someone who gets in the car that openly supports the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm sure I've had people in the car that do, but they're not openly talking about it. It doesn't seem like they want to openly talk about it either, which is kind of telling. So when the topics of conversation do come up of, what was going on in Chicago, I had one gentleman I had to take, I think the day after, or the day of those Chicago riots. So the morning after, I got a ride from a gentleman going to the airport from the Waldorf Astoria in Disney, because that's where the media is bubbled in that hotel. And he was doing something with one of the technology companies that was helping social distance the NBA and everyone. And he said he had to fly back to Chicago because all that rioting and looting was taking place at a storefront underneath his apartment. I mean, again, this guy, he's from Chicago, or sorry, he's from here in Florida, has been living up there. But, I mean, he was a younger gentleman, college educated, obviously, and he didn't seem too happy with what was going on, and I don't think he was a Trump supporter. Maybe he was, maybe he isn't, but if he was a middle-of-the-road guy, he definitely wasn't leaning towards Black Lives Matter. And again, in other just random conversations, as it comes up, I don't hear anyone saying, like, I understand that this crap is extremely felonious and illegal, but I kind of see where they're coming from. It just doesn't exist. I mean, most people are disgusted, they're scared, and they see through all the political hand magic that Democrats are attempting. What protests? Kamala Harris just got nominated, or is Joe Biden's vice president? Yeah, next question. Well, this is a perfect segue into our next segment.
With the airing of grievances. I got a lot of problems with you people.
Yes, that's right. The airing of grievances. So all you sloppy Uber riders, here's a hint. If you have chicken gravy and you load it into a stranger's trunk, be careful, bitch. Ask. Just ask. Ask if it's okay to eat. Ask if you can suck down that road soda while we drive. I really don't want to talk to you if you're drunk also. Keep your fucking mask on and shut the fuck up, bitch. All you fucks who want to defund the police, you sound and act just as ridiculous as anyone who refuses to wear a mask. Why is everyone in this country, and oddly on the left, obsessed with blaming the federal government for their local problems? I kind of alluded to this earlier. I mean, if I slap my coworker with a summer sausage, and no, that's not a euphemism, or is it? No, it's not. You don't go to the CEO of the company and file a complaint. I mean, you do go to human resources, but that's their jurisdiction. That's how that works. If you live in a blue state and people are dying left and right, blame your governor, you fuck. Not the president of the United States. He oversees the federal system. The governor oversees the state. If you are choosing to look the other way, you're a fucking retard. All right, I take that back. But you're just politically inept. You're basically like the guy who watches football that's calling offsides when you meant to say false start. You don't know what you're talking about. Anyone who receives an inheritance and voted for Bernie Sanders but didn't give 50% of said inheritance away to the government, you're a cheap fuck. I'm still also fuming about some of these teachers who refuse to teach. These fucking lazy fucks. If you're able to go out to eat and stuff your face with whatever sodium-laden lack of protein cardboard garbage you're eating, you can teach a fucking class. I mean, how many of these keyboard warrior teachers are pounding away these thoughts on Facebook while they shovel their overly processed Panda Express orange chicken into their fat fucking faces? Just think about that. One last thing before we get out of here. I want to go back to 2016. Actually, make that 2014. This is where I first heard of outrage culture, which definitely evolved into this cancel culture we see today. By 2015, when Democrats recording sorry to say that again. By 2015, when Democrats were courting moderate Republican votes in the general election, straight white males were being declared the enemy. So out of the gate, Democrats were already losing me. You know, again, going back, when Obama was elected, no issue with the guy, other than he was a White Sox fan, which was a bit of a deal breaker. But, you know, I was able to look the other way. By the time, you know, he takes Obamacare, which for some reason everyone tends to forget, Obamacare was actually the product of a conservative think tank foundation, the Heritage Foundation. Instead of, you know, doing something like Medicare for all, single-payer tax care, when they had the Senate and the House, they take a Republican plan from a conservative think tank and implement that into our society. And then that's where he loses me. That mandate, he lost me. So they already had a pretty hard road, battle uphill when it came to my vote going into that 2016 general election. But then you say straight white males are the enemy? I mean, how many more people are there like me that heard that and thought, all right, well, I got 20 Republicans to choose from. Let's see which one can get my vote. So forget that, you know, the Democrats and Obama, or Trump called him O'Biden, Biden, forget that they passed this right-wing healthcare plan that taxed you for not opting into it. I mean, the long story short here is Democrat choices and policies were so bad that Donald Trump was the most logical choice out of Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. And the feckless Republican Party is no better. Think about that. Out of 20 people they ran for president, Donald Trump was the most logical choice. I mean, really, you're going to hand the nuke codes to Jeb? Or Lindsey Graham? What about Bobby Jindal? Can you think of anyone else that was running 5 years ago? Rick Perry? Oh, God. I can't even think of anyone else. Herman Cain? Ben Carson? Anyway. I mean, 4 years later, the Democrats have the opportunity to offer federally legalized marijuana, and they balk at it. They don't even put it in their party platform. Did they put in Medicare for all, single-payer health care into their party platform this year? No. I think it's like 70% of their base wants Medicare for all. There are Republican people my age, Republicans in their 30s, 40s, probably even older, that want federally legalized marijuana. And neither party can get behind that. And here the Democrats have this opportunity to steal votes away from the Republicans by using this opportunity to put federally legalized weed into their party platform, and they refuse. What does that tell you? I mean, if you're one of these fucks out there on Facebook saying vote blue 2.5 months before the election's supposed to go down, and are you even aware of what's going on here? They don't want to put marijuana, federally legalized marijuana, or Medicare for all in their party platform when the majority of their progressive base and most base, there's basically, you can marry those two moderate lanes on either side with federal marijuana legalization. Maybe you might lose someone with the Medicare for all and all that other climate change crap, but I guarantee you there are people on the moderate right who will turn their back on all those other, I'm kind of talking about me, but I'm sure how many more of there like me are there? That's kind of what the question is, that will turn their back on all those other policies to get federally legalized marijuana. I guarantee you that. And the Democrats, what have they done? Nothing. They refuse to put that in their party platform. And then they're going to sit here and wonder why no one wants to fucking vote for them. It's insane. And do you think Joe Biden is behind I don't know, I can't even say this, federally legalized marijuana? Absolutely not. He says there should be more science on the subject. So he wants more research, which is kind of like old Washington-style politics that puts you in this like endless, vicious loop of just going nowhere, because it's a Schedule 1 drug. Like you can't, like you need these extreme special permits. They have the right to do science experiments on it. So he's just fucking literally jerking you off. And probably not in the way you want. Well, maybe knowing Biden actually is probably the way you want. The other way, it would not look good or be good, or I don't even know if he could last that long. Anyway, I don't even know where I'm at anymore. It's just insane to me that opportunities like this exist to court people on both moderate lanes on either side, and the Democrats can't do either. What do they want to do? Hey, let's defund the police. Oh, okay, let's defund the police. Well, how about the post office? All of a sudden, Democrats are like, whoa, easy there, guy. Easy there. Nominating a dotard, as Kim Jong-un and the KCNA would say, a doting fool who's only being used as a vessel to the White House, only to be discarded like that last piece of toilet paper off the roll. That nice last thin piece of toilet paper that's going to absolutely do nothing for you because you just took a shit that looks like undigested chili. I mean, this is basically Weekend at Bernie's meets Fast and Furious, but with way less stunts. It's Aliens meets Mean Girls meets Deliverance. And the American people are the ones squealing like pigs. That's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for joining us. Like I said, we're on Facebook. Give us a like. Give us a follow. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and of course, Spreaker. This is your one-stop shop, current events and politics podcast. Society's a joke, and we're just here for the first set. Thanks again, you fucks. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Ready Set Podcast. Check us out next week, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter and look for us on our YouTube channel. Ready Set Podcast.